We're going in 3, 2, 1.
Yo, what up, everyone? Tay here, and been super busy this month with work stuff and some other projects I'm working on, so I've missed a lot, and we have a lot to talk about regarding all the crazy stuff that's been going on with the MCU and the news coming out and the announcements over Comic-Con in the last few weeks. So yeah, there's a lot to discuss today, but what I really want to get into is I was recently looking over some of the past Fantastic Four and Avengers leaks that have come out over the past year or so to kind of see if there's any information in there that could give us some hints at what's going to happen with the Fantastic Four and the upcoming Avengers movies in light of all the recent news that's been dropping. Because over the past month, Marvel Studios have obviously confirmed a lot of plot details about both the Fantastic Four and Avengers 5, and I noticed that some of those details line up very closely with some of the older leaks that dropped, over the past year before any of that info was officially revealed by Marvel Studios. So yeah, we'll discuss that as well as a bunch of other recent Avengers news and theory talk relating to Phase 6 in general. But first, before we get into everything, of course, I should throw out the potential for spoilers and a spoiler warning because I am going to be discussing some of these older Fantastic Four and Avengers leaks. So yeah, there's always the possibility that those could contain spoilers, so you've been warned. And then also make sure you watch until the end of the video because we do have a bunch of super thanks questions to get to, which on that note, remember that if you would like to leave a super thanks with a question or a comment on this video, that those are greatly appreciated and really help out the channel a lot, and that I will read and respond to those in the next video.
Stephen, your arrival here confuses and destabilizes reality. The larger the footprint you leave behind, the greater the risk of an incursion.
Incursion?
An incursion occurs when the boundary between two universes erodes, and they collide, destroying one or both entirely.
Alright, so like I said, in this video we are going to discuss both some past and recent leaks, and then add that to everything that's been confirmed so far about Phase 6 and the upcoming Avengers movies, and then, like always, we'll spin that off into some detailed theory talk. And one of the scoops that dropped just recently came from Daniel RPK, where he said that RDJ's Doctor Doom will be a variant who comes from the same universe that the Fantastic Four will come from. Because, as we know, Marvel Studios have already confirmed that the events of the Fantastic Four movie will indeed take place in an alternate timeline and not the MCU 616 universe, not the Prime universe. Now, considering the source and that this is a scoop, of course this should be taken with a grain of salt. However, I did think that this was worth mentioning because with Doctor Doom likely being a variant, on top of how intertwined Doom is with the Fantastic Four in the comics, I do think it would totally make sense for him to come from their same universe, especially considering that the Fantastic Four will be one of the last movies to come out before Avengers Doomsday. Now, considering the monumental amount of money that Robert Downey Jr. is getting paid by Marvel Studios to come back, I kind of doubt that we will see him have some kind of significant role in the actual Fantastic Four movie itself. But that said, I do think that there is a very good chance that Robert Downey Jr. will make his first official appearance as Doctor Doom in one of the Fantastic Four post-credit scenes, as a way to directly set up what's going to happen in Avengers 5. But when it comes to setting up the upcoming Avengers movies, I don't think it'll just be the Fantastic Four credit scene that will be important. I think it'll likely be the entire events of the movie itself. Because based off of everything we know so far, I do think that what happens in the Fantastic Four movie with their universe and Galactus and all of that stuff will have direct consequences that will affect the MCU 616 universe and the bigger catastrophes that will happen there in Avengers Doomsday, and even following that with Battleworld in Avengers Secret Wars. And what I'm talking about is the incursions. Because Marvel Studios first introduced the concept of the incursions back in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and then we also saw Kang mention the incursions to Janet in Ant-Man Quantumania, and then we even saw the beginning stages of an incursion at the end of the Marvels. And there's only one reason that Marvel Studios would introduce the concept of the incursions into the MCU. And that is because they were likely foreshadowing the role that the incursions would play in the upcoming Avengers films. Because the only time that the incursions have really been used in the comics was in Jonathan Hickman's New Avengers Incursion Saga, which ended with the multiverse being destroyed by the incursions, which is what then directly led into Battleworld and the 2015 Secret Wars event. So yeah, I think that the incursions are likely going to be a very big part of the plot in Avengers Doomsday, just like they were in the lead up to Secret Wars in the comics. In fact, I think that's probably the real reason why Marvel Studios titled Avengers 5 Avengers Doomsday in the first place. Because on the surface, it's obviously a title that lets general audiences know that Doctor Doom is going to be the big main villain of the movie. But I think that the deeper meaning behind that title is that it's because the plot of that movie will be about the last day of the MCU when an incursion comes to destroy it. So it'll quite literally be the doomsday of the MCU 616 universe. And honestly, I've been kind of surprised that Marvel Studios haven't mentioned the incursions more recently in some of their recent projects, like Deadpool and Wolverine, for example. Because the first time I watched that movie, as much as I enjoyed it, I thought that using the incursions would have been a better way to explain Wade's universe dying instead of the whole anchor beans concept. But then I thought about it, and I think for one thing, Marvel Studios introduced that concept of anchor beans because that will also be significant in the upcoming Avengers movies. But I also think that the other reason that they didn't use the concept of the incursions in Deadpool and Wolverine was because they don't want to use the same plot device multiple times and have it lose its impact. However, at the same time, if the incursions are going to be at the center of the plot for Avengers 5, then I do think it's necessary for Marvel Studios to remind the casual audience of what exactly an incursion is and the real threat that they pose in one of those projects that comes out before Avengers 5. And I think that that project will likely be the Fantastic Four. Because in some of these older Fantastic Four leaks, we heard that Galactus would be the main villain, and that the events of the movie would take place in an alternate universe, and that that universe would end up being destroyed by an incursion at the end of the movie, but that the Fantastic Four family would somehow escape or be saved before their universe was destroyed, and that's how they will be able to cross over into the events of Avengers 5 and Avengers Secret Wars. And again, these older leaks that I'm talking about came out before any of the Fantastic Four promotional art, and long before Kevin Feige confirmed that Galactus would be the main villain and that the events of the movie would take place in a different universe. So at this point, it looks like at least part of what was in those leaks appears to be accurate, which does make me want to look a little bit closer at the other parts of the leaks that have yet to be confirmed. Because if the incursions are going to be a major threat and a big part of the plot in Avengers Doomsday, then it would totally make sense for Marvel Studios to want to include the incursions in the Fantastic Four movie and see an incursion destroy their universe. That way the audience can really grasp just what a big deal the incursions are and what a destructive threat they represent to the MCU 616 universe once we get to Avengers Doomsday.
I know what I want. I know what kind of God I need to be. For you. For all of us.
Alright, so in the Fantastic Four movie, I don't think it's just going to be the incursions that will affect what's going to happen in Avengers Doomsday, because I think that the events of that movie will also set up Doctor Doom's role in the Avengers movies, and possibly even set up how Doctor Doom will find out about Loki and the TVA. Because one of the other tidbits of news that's been revealed recently is the company production titles for both Avengers movies. And according to these reports, the production title for Avengers Doomsday will be For All Time Always, and the production title for Avengers Secret Wars will be Royale. And the reason this is significant is because the production titles that Marvel Studios pick usually contain some kind of hint at the plot behind those projects. So with the production title of Avengers Secret Wars being Royale, that obviously makes me think of a battle royale. And that would make sense because that would definitely seem to line up with what we can expect for the events of that movie. However, it's the production title for Avengers Doomsday that I think is more interesting, because For All Time Always is of course a very obvious reference to the Loki show and the TVA's famous catchphrase, For All Time Always.
For all time, always.
So yeah, with the production title for Avengers Doomsday being For All Time Always, this just seems to confirm the reports we've heard regarding Loki and the TVA playing a huge role in both of the upcoming Avengers films. And in some of the older Fantastic leaks that I've been talking about, those said that the Fantastic Four's universe would be destroyed by the end of that movie, but that the Fantastic Four family would end up being saved somehow. However, what some of those leaks also said is that the Fantastic Four would actually end up being saved by the TVA, because the TVA knows that they have some kind of bigger role to play in the coming multiversal war. And again, like I said, these leaks came out quite a while before any real information had been confirmed about the Fantastic Four movie by Marvel Studios, and it was also before much had been confirmed about the plot of Deadpool and Wolverine. And I mentioned Deadpool and Wolverine because in that movie, we saw that the TVA did try to recruit Wade to send him to the Sacred Timeline because, as Paradox put it, his superiors at the TVA saw that Wade had some kind of larger role to play in future events. Which I think when we all saw Deadpool and Wolverine and Paradox mentions his superiors, that most of us likely assumed that he was referring to Loki, as Loki is the one that's kind of overseeing the TVA at this point, and he can also peer into the multiverse and see what's happening throughout every timeline. So Loki would be the optimal person to pick and choose different heroes from across the multiverse to save to form some kind of multiversal Avengers type team. And I mean, for a long time now, we've heard about these leaks and rumors that in Phase 6 it would be revealed that the TVA wouldn't just save Deadpool, but that they would also be saving various other different multiversal heroes that have some kind of role to play in future events. And considering that it now looks even more likely that Loki and the TVA will indeed play some kind of big role in Avengers Doomsday, it does seem quite possible that the TVA could indeed be the ones who will end up saving the Fantastic Four at the end of their movie and bring them over to the Sacred Timeline or to the MCU 616 universe as a way to set their characters up to appear in Avengers Doomsday. Because at Comic-Con, Kevin Feige confirmed that the main characters from Captain America Brave New World, the Thunderbolts, and the Fantastic Four would all appear in Avengers Doomsday. Now, I'm not 100% saying it'll be the TVA who saved the Fantastic Four at the end of their movie, because I'm sure that might just be one possibility that Marvel Studios are throwing around as different ways that they could get the Fantastic Four team over into the MCU 616 universe. And there are definitely plenty of other ways that I could see it being done in the movie besides that. I mean, two possibilities I can think of right off the top of my head is that Marvel Studios could introduce either the bridge or the multiversal life rafts, both of which were very important pieces of technology that could travel the multiverse that were used in Jonathan Hickman's Incursion saga. But just for the sake of this video, let's go down the path of the TVA and what was discussed in these past leaks, and assume that that might be how the Fantastic Four enter the MCU 616 universe. Because if it turns out that the TVA are the ones responsible for saving the Fantastic Four at the end of their movie, then another thing that could directly set up is how Doctor Doom could find out about Loki and the TVA. Because a little while back, Cosmic Circus reported that the upcoming Avengers movies would also be adapting certain plot elements from Jason Aaron's Avengers Assemble and Avengers Forever comic. And that is an extremely big multiversal story that's about tons of different multiversal characters and teams. But even though this is a gigantic multiversal story, at its core, the main characters of that comic are really variants of Loki and Doctor Doom. Because the main hero of that story is a variant of Loki who goes under the alias of Avenger Prime, who is actually very similar to the current version of Loki in the MCU. And then the main villain of that story is an extremely powerful variant of Doctor Doom who goes by the alias of Doom Supreme. Because the short version of what happens in that story is we see this variant of Loki assembling his own teams of multiversal Avengers as he is watching over the multiverse from the Quarry of Creation. And in the comics, the Quarry of Creation is basically this realm that exists outside of the multiverse, and it's kind of the birthplace of the multiverse because it's where all of these different multiversal branches grow from. And what's happening with Doom Supreme in this comic is he is assembling his own team of multiversal villains because he is trying to defeat Loki and his multiversal Avengers so that he can take over the Quarry of Creation and then use it to take control of the multiverse and reforge its history. And I bring this up again because I do think that this sounds like it could be very similar to what we will see happen in Avengers Secret Wars, where Doctor Doom will likely be trying to take over control of Loki's throne at the end of time so that he can take over the multiverse or perhaps rebuild the multiverse under his control. But the larger point is that however the movies play out, I do think that even though there's going to be tons and tons of different multiversal characters in both of these Avengers films, at their core, I do think that two of the main characters of those movies will be both Loki and Doctor Doom, just like what we saw in Avengers Forever. But anyways, let's move on to the next section of the video because we still have a lot left to talk about with Doctor Doom and how he could fit into what's happening with the incursions, as well as what could be happening with Galactus beyond the Fantastic Four movie as we get into the upcoming Avengers movies and how that could cross over with the plot of Doctor Doom as well. Okay, so besides Jason Aaron's Avengers Forever comic that we just talked about, the other comic that I think will have the biggest influence over the story that's told in Avengers Doomsday will be the early portion of Jonathan Hickman's Secret Wars, as well as the story that led up to Secret Wars, Time Runs Out. Because in the Time Runs Out story, while the incursions are slowly destroying the multiverse, Doctor Doom is off on his own mission trying to figure out who's behind the incursions so that he can use that information to save at least some semblance of the multiverse. And what Doctor Doom eventually learns is that it's actually the Beyonders who are the ones that are behind the incursions, and at the end of the Time Runs Out story, we actually see Doctor Doom and Molecule Man teaming up with Doctor Strange to go and defeat the Beyonders so that Doom can use the Beyonders' omnipotent power to become a god and create Battleworld. However, it's not until Secret Wars issue number 5, several issues after that, that we finally see a flashback to what exactly Doctor Doom had been doing during the Time Runs Out story and what his bigger master plan was all along. And that is that Doctor Doom figured out that the Beyonders' key to starting the incursions were basically anchor beams, the same concept that was just introduced in Deadpool and Wolverine. But in the comics, the anchor beams were not all different characters, they were instead all different variants of Owen Reese, the Molecule Man. And how this worked is, in the comics, every universe in the multiverse included a different version of Molecule Man. And when a Molecule Man would die, that would start the death process for that universe. So when Doctor Doom figured out that Molecule Man was the key behind the Beyonders' plans and how they started the incursions, he recruited the 616 version of Molecule Man to work with him, and then used his army of Black Swans to send them out into the multiverse and destroy every other variant of Molecule Man they could find. Because under normal circumstances, all of these different Molecule Man variants throughout the multiverse would die off slowly, and that would slowly, over time, destroy the multiverse. But by Doctor Doom making a coordinated plan for his Black Swans to go out and take out as many Molecule Men as fast as they could, this would massively speed up the incursions and thus massively speed up the death of the multiverse. And Doctor Doom did this because he saw it as the only way of drawing out the Beyonders so he could trick them and steal their power. And he also did this because it was a part of his grand plan so he could use that power to rule over Battleworld, which after the incursions would be the only reality left in existence. And like I said, this is all revealed in Secret Wars issue number 5, which is the exact comic that we saw in The Void in Deadpool and Wolverine. And this is something we've talked about in past videos, but I obviously think that this comic being used as an Easter egg in Deadpool and Wolverine makes this issue extremely important. Now, I think there's probably going to be several different reasons that this specific comic was the one that was included as an Easter egg in Deadpool and Wolverine. Because this issue hints at Doctor Doom, it hints at Anchor Beans, it hints at the origins of Battleworld, and it also gives us the backstory of Doctor Doom's larger role in making the incursions happen. So in the MCU, it's possible that in Avengers Doomsday, it could be revealed that Doctor Doom has basically been doing the same thing that he was doing in the comics, that he's been targeting Anchor Beans from across the MCU multiverse and taking them out as a way to cause and speed up the incursions. Now, the one problem with that theory is that in Deadpool and Wolverine, Paradox said that when an Anchor Bean dies, it starts the death process of that universe, which normally takes thousands of years. So if the death process of a universe takes thousands of years, then that wouldn't really help Doctor Doom. However, what would happen if someone started taking out Anchor Beans all across the multiverse in a short period of time, or took out Anchor Beans from 2 neighboring universes? Well, maybe that would cause a chain reaction to where those universes would begin to collide just like they did in the comics, causing this big chain reaction of incursions. I mean, of course, this is just a theory, but based on what happened in the comics and based on the fact that this specific issue of Secret Wars was the one teased in Deadpool and Wolverine, it does seem like it must hold some kind of clues at what's going to happen in the upcoming Avengers films. And considering that Marvel Studios also just introduced this concept of Anchor Beans in Deadpool and Wolverine, it does make me wonder if all of this could tie together in a very similar way that it did in Jonathan Hickman's Time Runs Out and Secret Wars story. And then something else I wanted to talk about in this video before we go is how Galactus could potentially fit into all of this. Because in the Secret Wars comics, both of the Secret Wars comics actually, the original 1984 version and also the more recent 2015 version, Galactus plays a pretty significant role, especially in the original 1984 comic. And with Galactus being confirmed to be the main villain of the Fantastic Four movie, and with us knowing that there will likely be some kind of universal catastrophe or an incursion that occurs in that movie, it does make me think that Galactus will most likely somehow tie into that or be involved, and that's what's happening with Galactus in that movie, and probably also what's happening with Franklin Richards will probably somehow tie into that big universal catastrophe. And with the Fantastic Four movie likely being, very connected to setting up the events of Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars, it does make me wonder if Galactus might also have some kind of role in those movies, and if not an actual role, if what happens with Galactus could still somehow tie into those movies. Because, as we know, the Russo brothers are now the ones who are going to be directing the upcoming Avengers films. And the Russo brothers have talked about wanting to direct an Avengers Secret Wars movie going back to like 2017 before they did Avengers Infinity War. And one of the main reasons they would always give when this topic would come up as to why they wanted to make a Secret Wars movie is because when they were kids, the biggest comic that came out that really influenced them and made them into these huge Marvel comic book fans was that original 1984 Secret Wars story. And even though the Beyonder and Doctor Doom are the main villains of that story, Galactus does play a very significant role in the events of that story. And the short version of what happens in that original 1984 Secret Wars story is a bunch of Marvel's most popular heroes and villains come to on these gigantic spaceships as they are being taken off into some mysterious part of space by this mysterious being called the Beyonder, who we actually never see in that story. And they end up on this mysterious planet, Battle World, and are told they basically need to battle each other for the Beyonder's entertainment. And so in that story, while all the different characters are trying to figure out how to escape Battle World and go home, Doctor Doom goes off on his own solo mission to figure out his own plan. And that plan is that he needs to defeat the Beyonder and steal his power, and that way he will be able to fix everything. But with Doctor Doom being a human, he doesn't have even a fraction of enough power to attempt taking on a godlike figure like the Beyonder. So what Doom does is he decides he's going to steal Galactus's power, the power cosmic, and siphon that power into himself so he can then attempt to use that to defeat the Beyonder and steal his power as well. And that's exactly what he does. He tricks Galactus and then uses a device to absorb the power cosmic from Galactus into himself, and then goes and challenges the Beyonder and uses the power cosmic to seemingly defeat him. And this is the point in that original Secret Wars story where everything kind of turns and Doctor Doom becomes the main villain instead of the Beyonder. And I bring this up because this is one of those moments that I wonder if we could see somehow adapted into the upcoming Avengers films. Because early on, back when Kang was still the main villain of the upcoming Avengers films, we did hear different rumors and scoops that the Beyonder would be the main villain of Avengers Secret Wars, and that it would be revealed that the Beyonder was actually a Kang variant, most likely Kang the Conqueror from Ant-Man Quantumania, returned with new powers. And while I'm still not ruling out the possibility that we could see some version of the Beyonder in Avengers Secret Wars, at this point, with Doctor Doom in the picture, it does seem a lot less likely because it doesn't seem like there's nearly enough time to also set up another mysterious villain when they're already trying to set up Doctor Doom with not a lot of time. So I do think it's less likely that the Beyonder, if he does appear, will play any kind of significant role like they might have earlier planned to. But the thing is in both Secret Wars stories, the old one and the more recent one, a key element of that story is that Doctor Doom gains these godlike abilities and powers. And I think that'll definitely be something we will see in the MCU Avengers movies as well, that somehow Doctor Doom is going to have to get godlike powers. And it makes me wonder where that will come from. Now, there are several different ways that Marvel Studios could make that happen. One possibility is it could tie into the whole Loki thing and that Doctor Doom could steal Loki's powers, but I'm not sure that would be exactly accurate. I could see Loki playing a role kind of similar to that of Molecule Man in the upcoming Avengers films, but I'm not so sure he'll exactly play the role of the Beyonder. Maybe he could. I don't know. It's complex. There's ways they could adapt elements of the Beyonder story into Loki's story, but not fully, at least not in my opinion. Another possibility is that he could somehow steal the powers from the Scarlet Witch, and that they could adapt elements from the Young Avengers Children's Crusade story. And that's something I've talked about in past theory videos. So that's definitely a possibility. Another thing they could do is Doctor Doom could perhaps capture Alioth, similar to what He Who Remains did during the past multiversal war. Because as we learned in Loki Season 1, the way that He Who Remains won the previous multiversal war was he captured Alioth and then used him to destroy other universes, and then once the war was won, he used Alioth to consume everything that was sent to the Void. And one of the things I've talked about in many, many past videos is how I think that the Void will most likely end up being the MCU's version of Battleworld. And after seeing Deadpool and Wolverine, I'm even more convinced of that. And if that's the case, then perhaps Doctor Doom could either steal the powers of Alioth and take them into himself, or just use Alioth in a similar way to what He Who Remains did in the past and kind of keep him as the watchdog of the Void while he rules over the throne at the end of time, something like that. Or tying this all back around to Galactus and how he got started on this topic is another thing that Doctor Doom could possibly do is he could steal the power cosmic from Galactus. Because there's a lot of ways that that storyline could somehow be set up or referenced or even occur in the Fantastic Four movie. And if not, then it could occur in one of the Avengers films. Because this is something that we've seen Doctor Doom do multiple times in the comics. We've seen Doctor Doom steal the power cosmic from Silver Surfer, and then we also saw Doom steal the power cosmic from Galactus in the 1984 Secret Wars story. And I do think something like that might make more sense than Doctor Doom stealing the power from the Beyonders, because the Beyonders have not been introduced yet, but we do know that Galactus will be introduced in the Fantastic Four movie. And in the comics, the power cosmic is extremely powerful and would be more than enough for Doctor Doom to become a god in the upcoming Avengers films like he was in the comics, especially since Marvel Studios can write the power cosmic into the MCU in any way they want. And I do think there's a lot of cool ways that Galactus could kind of fill a similar role to what the Beyonders had in the Time Runs Out story and that whole Hickman incursion saga, where instead of the Beyonders being the big multiversal or universal threat in the MCU, it could instead be Galactus. Now, this isn't a fully formed theory just yet. This is just something I thought of while I was working on this video. But I do think it's a really cool, fun angle that would be really interesting for Marvel Studios to explore in the upcoming Avengers films and could make Galactus more than just this one-and-done villain for the Fantastic Four movie, where he could have a much bigger role in the upcoming Avengers films, even if he doesn't necessarily have a whole bunch of screen time. So yeah, this is something I definitely think I'll talk about in future videos because there's a lot of cool angles with that. And like I said, if it's not Galactus, there's a lot of cool angles that they could do with Doctor Doom and the Scarlet Witch and Loki and Alioth, and I'm sure other stuff that I'm not even thinking of. So yeah, you guys will have to let me know what you think about all this in the comments below. Leave your own theories. You know, one of the things about Robert Downey Jr. returning to play Doctor Doom in the upcoming Avengers films is it leaves so many possibilities of where Marvel Studios and the Russo brothers could go with this story, that this is just one avenue and one possible road that they could go down. And I'm sure in some of the upcoming videos, I will go down a completely different path and talk about totally different theories, and that'll be something that continues up until the trailer drops and eventually the movies start to come out. So yeah, you guys leave your theories in the comments down below, and I hope you guys like this video. Please subscribe to the channel, leave a like, share, but don't go anywhere just yet because we do still have some super thanks questions to get to, where we're going to talk more about Deadpool and Wolverine and the upcoming Avengers films and Doctor Doom and all of that. So yeah, don't go anywhere just yet, and let's get to those super thanks.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's jump into these super thanks, and as always, I will start with the ones that don't have comments, and hopefully you don't hear my annoying neighbor's dogs barking in the background, but if you do, apologies. But yeah, let's jump into these, and the first two we have are, of course, two from Paul Sanford and two from Mr. Gator Chris. Thank you very much, Chris, and thank you very much, Paul. And I almost missed these two from Paul because they weren't highlighted for some reason, so I hope I didn't miss any from you in the past videos before these, Paul. So if I did, sorry about that, but thank you very much, Paul and Chris, really appreciate it. And then we have €5 or whatever that is you call those over in the UK from my guy Jeffrey. And this one says, "Hi Tay, how are you, bro? Just checking in to say thanks for recent content, which has brought some much needed cheer. Really hope that 100K subscribers come soon and will be so well deserved. Will you do a live to celebrate?" All right, awesome. Thank you very much, Jeffrey. And, I don't know if I'll do a live or not. I mean, it's something I think about a lot, but my schedule is kind of opposite from, when doing live chats is optimal because I'm a night person. I work at night, and those hours don't jive very well with when it's the best time to do live chats. But that doesn't mean I couldn't figure something out. But I am setting up a space in my work area here. I got a camera going and everything. I've been testing out to do some on-screen stuff for the first time. And I have been thinking, since we're so close to 100,000 subscribers, that would probably be the optimal time to do that. And as far as the live streams, I'm not going to commit to that for the 100,000. Maybe we'll just have to play it by ear. So yeah, thank you very much, Jeffrey. Really appreciate it. And then we also have $5 from OneMark302. And this one says, "Love the channel, have been here for many years now. Love watching you grow. I tried to get a popcorn bucket and they didn't have any wolves heads. Do you have any or a Connect for one? Thanks." All right, thank you very much, Mark. And I'm assuming this is about the Deadpool and Wolverine popcorn buckets because this is from, a little while back. And I do not have any Connects, unfortunately. I looked for some when I went and saw the movie opening night as well, and I did get a popcorn bucket, but it wasn't near as cool as the ones we've seen online. So yeah, sorry, no Connects, man, but thank you very much for the super thanks. And then the last one we have is a longer one with a question from Meerkat Teeth. And this one says, "As always, another long question, haha. After the initial excitement of the RDJ casting, as I've thought about it more, I'm feeling more and more trepidation at this decision. With Loki and Scarlet Witch, I think the pieces needed for an effective Secret Wars story were already in place. I've been a proponent of giving Loki a lot of Doctor Doom's story for Secret Wars because I think his character is in the perfect position to serve the story properly. It seems like if Marvel is going to shell out the insane dump truck load of cash for RDJ, any plans around those characters probably have changed significantly. Paying that amount of money for RDJ specifically indicates that this version of Doom will be in some way a variant of Tony Stark. If this isn't the case, then the decision and the money seems to be a little silly to me. I think I've settled on the idea that this will either turn out to be an amazing decision or a terrible one. Do you think RDJ's Doom will be the man of magic and science we all want, or do you think this casting will end up negatively affecting the characterization of Doom as a whole in order to play out to the strengths of RDJ and his MCU connections? Love your videos, man. You're by far the best Marvel content creator on YouTube and criminally underrated." Oh, I love it. Thank you very much, Meerkat Teeth. And as far as what you're saying about Robert Downey Jr. being Dr. Doom and the Tony Stark connection, I have a lot of faith that whatever the plan is, it's going to work out because it's the Russo brothers who are doing the movies, and based on all the Russo brothers' past MCU projects, I have more faith in them than anybody else at Marvel Studios, any other directors. But one thing you did said with Loki and the Scarlet Witch and their roles in the Secret Wars movie possibly being reduced because of Robert Downey Jr., I don't think that's true, honestly, because I get what you're saying. I've talked about Loki potentially kind of being the villain of the Secret Wars movie, taking the role of Doctor Doom or the Beyonder in past videos. And while I can see a path for how they would do that, I don't think that's what they're going to do. I think they really want to make Loki a big hero, since they've already done Loki as the big villain in the first Avengers movie and really a villain throughout most of the Infinity Saga. I think what they're going for now is something much closer to the Loki that we see in Jason Aaron's Avengers Forever comic, where they're going for this big heroic multiversal version of Loki, who they want to be one of the main heroes of this story. And I think that's still in place because I think they're basically going to do the same thing with Loki that they were going to do when it was Kang. And I think that a lot of their plans for what they were going to do with Kang will probably end up just being folded into what they're going to do with Doctor Doom. I don't think it'll be exactly the same. I think there's definitely going to be things they're changing. But I always thought that what they were going to do with Kang in the upcoming Avengers films was adapt a lot of Doctor Doom's story from the Hickman comics into Kang's story for the MCU. And now that it is Doctor Doom and not Kang, now they can just do it with Doctor Doom. So I think what they will do with Loki and probably Scarlet Witch as well will stay mostly on track to what they were planning before, and they'll just use it with Doctor Doom instead of Kang. So yeah, thank you very much for that, Meerkat Teeth. And thank you to all you guys. Really appreciate y'all with the super thanks. And remember, if you would like to leave a super thanks with a question or a comment on this video, those are very appreciated, and I will read and respond to those in the next video. And I love this question from Meerkat Teeth. This is the perfect kind of stuff that's fun to talk about in these super thanks questions. So yeah, if you have a question or a comment, leave them in the super thanks, and I will get to those in the next one. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, everyone. Hope you like this video. Subscribe to the channel, all that stuff. Leave a like, share. Sharing really helps out a lot. Come follow the channel on Twitter, and I will be back soon with the next one.